Hey, OneMicNite artists, it's Marcos Luis here. You know, making an impact on the world is an immense task. We never know when we're doing it that it could have the ramifications of starting a movement. My guest today has done just that. She is an award-winning journalist, and I'm so happy to talk to her. She'll be coming on in a moment, but I want you to think about some things of how you can make an impact on the world. We all do it in different ways. It doesn't have to be the same, and it doesn't have to be in a huge way. It starts with yourself. So that's going to be what we're talking about today. We're going to get into a little bit about her book, her latest book, and maybe a little bit of politics. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is One Mic Night. Hi, everyone, and welcome to One Mic Night, the podcast that brings you stories of artists and people on their journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in life and the business. You know who I am. It's Marcos Luis, and I'm back. We're in season 5, and we are in the beginning of spring. So I'm really excited to have some good weather, and I'm glad that you all could join me. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, please make sure you follow us, hit the bell at the top, and make sure you get the notifications because you never know when I'm going to drop an episode. We do air the episodes every Tuesday night, but the night will be switching soon. So make sure you click that bell to find out when it drops. Join us for the live chat. My guest today, and I am over the moon excited about her. She's an award-winning journalist. She's the author of American Runaway, Black and Free in Paris in the Trump Years, along with 6 other books. She has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Oprah Magazine, Glamour, and a bevy of other publications. Please welcome Audrey Edwards to One Mic Night. How you doing, Audrey?
I am fine, Marcos. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Listen, I have questions.
Okay. I hope I have answers.
The first question is, who is Audrey Edwards?
Oh my goodness. Audrey Edwards is a Black female, American born of a certain age, baby boomer, an ex-wife, a mother, a grandmother, a writer, a thinker, I hope. An obsessive user of social media, Facebook in particular, and a self-published author, the latest accomplishment for which I'm very proud.
I love it. Let's go back a little bit. Where were you born? Where are you from?
I am from the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, in particular, Tacoma, Washington, a big suburb of Seattle, Washington. It's actually the 3rd largest city in the state, but we're so close to Seattle that we kind of get overshadowed by that great city. But I grew up in a smaller working class town. And it was a good place to grow up. I'm happy I grew up there. Not a lot of Black folk, maybe 10% of the population, out of a population then of about 150,000. So we were minorities. But in some ways that was good. So I do appreciate what growing up in that part of the country gave me.
How so? Good, how so? Because probably at the time you were born, there were a lot of dynamics going on in the United States in terms of race relations, in terms of just the economy in
Yes,
general.
yes. I'm a baby boomer
Mhm.
born post World War II, shortly after World War II, which was actually in many ways a great time. And we moved into the 60s, which became a better time for Blacks in America, the
Mm.
civil rights movement, the women's movement dovetailed with that. So I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s and had opportunities that many folk of previous generations, Black folk of previous generations, did not have. So
Let's
it
talk
was a
about it.
good time. It was a good
Yeah.
time to be Black, and it was a good time to be a woman.
Talk about it because this is why I wanted to have you on the show because the younger people who listen to the show and the younger people in general, they don't know. They may have read a few things, but they don't really know what the life was like.
True, true, true. My father was in the military, so my brother and I and parents spent my early years in Japan where he was stationed. But for me, what was very transformative were the few months we spent in Virginia after his service in Japan was over and he was waiting for orders. And Virginia was wretchedly segregated. I went
Mm.
to a third grade class that was overpopulated, two kids to a desk, textbooks with pages torn out, bathrooms that had no doors on the stalls, crumbling infrastructure, not really much of an infrastructure. And it was really a wretched place to learn, especially coming from Japan, which was beautiful and ordered and mannerly. Coming into a situation where being Black made you less than human, and you have that thrown in your face every day as a kid because you were in a school that was just wretched. And I remember we walked to school and we would pass the white school that was new and shiny and orderly and beautiful. And what that does to children at an early age is just assault your whole sense of self. Your whole self esteem starts to be eroded. And I really salute the pioneers of the civil rights movement who were on the front lines, who despite the wretched conditions, grew up healthy because they had families that were supportive. They had, even if the school was segregated, the teachers were supportive, and the teachers understood the value of the Black children.
Yes.
So that was our saving grace.
Tell us, tell
That
us.
was our saving grace. It really
I love
was.
this. I love this because we talked about this on this podcast before in I want to say season 4, episode 13. We had a retired
Mhm.
dean. Her name is Fran House, and the whole conversation was about separate but equal schools.
Mm,
So we
mm,
learned about, what it was like. She
right.
grew up in the South, and we talked about what the differences were between Black and white schools and how your self-esteem was shattered.
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
do you then rise from the ashes? How are you the phoenix that rise from the ashes?
Well, this is why I'm going to tell you something, Marcos.
Let's
I've
go.
always thought we as a people, I've always thought we were superior.
Mm,
And I would tell young people when I addressed them when I was still at Essence, I would start off a lot of my conversations by saying anybody who survived that middle passage, that horrific trip from Africa to the New World, anyone who walked off those boats
mm.
were superior. They were superior physically, they were superior psychologically, they were superior spiritually. And I would then say to them, we are the descendants of those people who walked off the boat because most are at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes. Yes.
So if you came through that, and I would say it wasn't because you were cute, it wasn't because your daddy knew somebody,
Right.
it wasn't because you had good hair,
Right.
it was because intrinsically, just looking at survival of the fittest, you were superior.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
who our people are. And that is what allowed us to survive slavery and Jim Crow discrimination and wretched, wretched segregated schools. You know, when I look at the leaders, Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, the leaders of the civil rights movement, they came out of segregated institutions.
Right.
And they were a mighty, mighty people.
Right.
despite everything being done to keep us from moving ahead.
People wanting more, people seeking more, people getting more, people galvanizing,
Exactly.
people unifying, people
Exactly.
creating things like churches who galvanize people in a
Mhm.
way that we create new laws. We're forcing a society to acknowledge us, to
Exactly.
give us equal rights. That's for
Exactly.
people of color, that's for women,
Hmm. Hmm.
to empower us. So
Right,
yeah,
right, right,
those
right.
are the
And
struggles.
yeah, yeah. And that to me, we've always been powerful. We've always had that. And we don't always see it. And we usually are not given credit for it. I mean, so much in this culture is structured to keep us from moving ahead,
Right.
to keep us from even living. So the fact that we are still here is its own miracle and a testament to our own power.
Absolutely.
So I've always understood that. I mean, not
Well,
always, but
you
as
do
an
now,
adult. Yeah,
right?
right. Thank you. Thank
And
you.
we know by design this country was not made for us. It was
No,
made for us to be a commercial product.
right. Well, this country was built by us. And that's the
Absolutely.
other thing I would
Yep.
tell people, when they talk about when the one, Trump who's running, when he talks about let's make America great again. Well, the people who made it great are us. And I would always say, you know what? If I had free labor for almost 400 years, if I had somebody to do my nails for free
Right.
and do my hair for free
Yep.
and take care of my child for free
Yep.
and clean my house for free, I'd be great too.
Absolutely.
How could you not be great if you have a free labor pool for 340 years?
Absolutely. And that's
You know?
exactly what I mean about us being the first commercial product. We
Right.
were the first commercial product who
Exactly.
built this country.
Exactly.
And when
And
he's
I now
referencing,
do real estate, and I tell people, I did a real estate panel, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I said, we have to understand that we, Black people, were the real estate in America.
yes,
We were the real
yes,
estate.
yes,
We were traded on markets, open markets. We were bartered, we were sold, we were traded. We were occasionally given freedom. But for the most part, we were, as you say, the property.
we were.
We were
Absolutely
the
were.
real estate.
Right.
So, with that history, if you understand that, you understand who you are, I think, in a bigger, greater way, because you look at the mere existence, not just existing, but triumphing, being successful. Those are the miracles
Right.
and the testament to the power.
Absolutely. Where do you think that revelation came for you? At what point in your life did that come for you?
I'll tell you something, Marcos. I worked 5 years for Essence Magazine. I was the executive editor. It's a magazine for Black women. And 5 years of covering and writing about and interviewing people of our race was so affirming because I saw firsthand what we were doing, whether it was a Tina Turner or a school teacher or Marva Collins or someone who started their business in their apartment. There were so many examples of our greatness. So that I think to me is where it really became solidified because on a daily basis, I would just see it. Um, Worked with writers who, many people had never heard of. They would submit a piece and I would say, oh my God, the writing is fabulous. So I was in an environment in a Black owned business, populated with Black people for the most part. And that's where that came. And when my son was a little boy, he's my stepson, and he would spend time with me. And he was like 6 or 7, and I would bring him to the office occasionally. And one day he is sitting in the office at the desk next to mine, and he looks at me and he says, I just love it here. I just love it here.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, you do? And he said, yeah. I said, why? And he kind of looked and I said, it must be all the pretty girls. He goes, no, no, it's not that. And I think for him, it was being in an environment where he saw Black people with purpose who looked good, a pretty well lit office environment, productivity happening. And I think in his mind, he couldn't even articulate it at the time, but he just said, I love it.
Yeah.
And it had to do with what he felt.
What he felt. Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that.
And I,
We're at a
and
time
I think
right
it was a form of Black power. I think that's what he was feeling too.
we're at a time right now where how first two things. One, how important is that, to have that a place like that where the image of people of color is
Oh,
so
so
great.
important.
And two,
So important.
we're at a time right now where the government is rolling back affirmative action and diversity and inclusion programs.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So much of America's history is a history of two steps forward, one step back. And for me, the dilemma that I'm facing as someone of this age is how do I feel about it? I think on a most fundamental level, race in America is the one conundrum that it just cannot overcome. And I think that's what's going to take it down. So I'm not as optimistic as I would like to be. And it's based on the history of what we've seen. So we had a civil rights movement that was very productive. We had a women's movement that was very productive. Now we're in a time where affirmative action has been turned back. Roe versus Wade has been turned back. All of the advances that were made in the last 50 to 60 years are now being turned back.
Yeah.
And I think we're looking now at a situation where the people who were the majority, namely whites, know that their numbers are diminishing, not just from Black folk who have been here, but from immigrants who are coming in. And their gene pool is diminishing. Their gene pool is dwindling. And that is horrifying to
Right.
people who are used to being in power. It's
It's the
horrifying.
fear factor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Of being run over by people of color.
Mhm.
So that's what we're looking at.
So we have a person who is a leader who's trumpeting, and I say trumpeting this whole
Mhm.
movement.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Well, my book, I don't know if you can see it, my
Hmm.
book called American Runaway, Black and Free in Paris in the Trump Years. I told people if Trump got in, if he was elected president, which I thought would never, never happen, I would leave the country. And I just knew that was one of those dramatic things that you say because I never thought for a minute that he would be elected. Trump's election says more about the country than it does about him.
Mm,
Because what frightened me was not Trump so much because Trump was known in New York.
right.
He was sometimes a joke in New York, sometimes he was admired, but every once in a while the press would skewer him and say he doesn't really have as much money as he claims. He's a braggart, he's not that smart, he blah 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 blah. So people in New York never took him that seriously as a presidential candidate.
Right.
He was a great promoter. I love The Apprentice. That was one
Right.
of my favorite shows.
I was going to say, we all knew him from The Apprentice
Yeah,
and, celebrity. He became a
yeah,
celebrity, a
a
TV
celebrity.
celebrity. Right.
Right, right, right. And he was, a showman. So when he ran for president, to me, this is a big joke until he won.
Right.
And then it became frightening and dangerous and a motivation for me to make a move. And the story I tell, I really thought I was going to leave and go to Paris for a few months because, with every new president, we have what's called the litmus test. The first, I guess it's 90 days, the
Right.
first 90 days of a president. You look at the president in those 90 days. So I knew in 90 days, he's going to be gone. Everybody is going to realize that a mistake was made. Now, I didn't know how he was going to be gone, but I just knew the mechanisms of democracy would get rid of him. And I don't know when it occurred to me that that wasn't going to happen, that he was not only going to be in for the full term, he was going to run again, and he might win again.
Right.
So I then had to really think about what am I going to do over the long term? How long can I really stay away? Um, is it going to be more permanent? It's still not permanent, but I'm still looking to see what's going to happen.
Right.
I'm
Because
still
we're basically on the eve of another election where we have two of the same candidates running again.
exactly.
And we know him better now because he's a
Yes,
lot more vocal. Has a
yes,
larger platform.
right. He's
And
shown more of his true colors.
absolutely 90 indictments,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
we are at a really serious point right now.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's made more serious, and I talk about this in the book. It's made more serious by the media, who gives him so much attention.
Hmm.
You know, he has a huge platform. Every time he shows, and I have a chapter in the book that talks about that. And in 2018, 19, when this was happening, it was nothing compared to what's going on now.
Right.
Nothing.
We can even see, even over the last 4 years, what a problem it has been for our government to pass a bill.
Right.
The division has been so bad
Exactly. Awful.
that we
We've
can't
never
even
been
pass a
here.
bill.
Yeah,
Never,
we've never been here in
never,
all of
ever.
the, yeah, yeah. However old the country is now, we've never been at this particular pass.
Right.
And it really coincides with us as a people getting more power, more education, a higher level of consciousness. See, where we are now, we know what has happened to us.
Right.
We can articulate it. We have people like you who have a platform, who have a media base and a media audience. So we can talk to each other and we know what's going on, which is even more threatening.
Much more threatening.
So when you talk about getting rid of affirmative action in higher education, what is that for? To keep more folk from coming into higher education, getting better educated, developing a higher consciousness, all of the things that we have done that have enabled us to push back and struggle and fight in a way that's been very effective.
Yes.
And the so-called powers that be know that.
Absolutely. And one thing we were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast is social media. So I
Yes,
applaud all the people who are on social media giving good information, valuable information on real estate, growing your wealth, financial education that we as people of color didn't have as extensive knowledge about
right,
before. I think
right.
since the pandemic happened, I personally have learned so much more about finances and the way to direct my own personal funds
Mm,
and gain
mm.
wealth.
Yeah, oh, that's
So,
wonderful.
so thankfully,
Yeah.
we're at a point right now where those things are happening.
Well, and you know what? But I have to say, Marco, so much of social media is not good. So I'm glad you're pointing out what about it is good,
Right.
because there's much that's good about social media. And it's
Right.
really all in how you use it
How you use it. Yeah.
and who is using it,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. And like
So,
you said, who has a voice? We now have a voice. We can
right,
put this information out because we have control over it.
right.
They control it a little bit, but we can control of what we're putting out there. I can put out information about the Real Housewives of Atlanta, or I can put out information about an
Exactly.
award-winning journalist who's inspired the world and has a humanitarian effort for the
Hmm.
people. I can
Right,
do that.
right, right. And that's very powerful. That is power. That
It
is
is.
power. But I think we're looking at a larger media that's giving power to this person who is running again. And that to me is scary because it's driven by money, it's driven by ratings, it's driven by sales. You
Yes.
want people to watch, you want people to buy your publication. So who do you feature? The person who's going to drive that,
Right. Media.
and I think that's where the press is losing, it's becoming irresponsible, for lack of a better word, to
It
me.
really is. I agree. I
So,
want to talk a little bit more about your book. Tell us a little bit more about the things you have in there because when I read it, this has probably one of the most interesting, easy reads,
oh, thank you. Thank
and
you.
the way and the style that you wrote it, you can't put it down. It
Oh,
just
thank you.
glides right into the next.
Thank you.
It
I
goes
appreciate
glides
that.
into the next chapter,
I
and you
appreciate
really don't want to put
that.
it down.
My writing came from working for magazines. I
Hmm.
have a magazine writer style, and I worked for big national magazines. So it's about reaching the masses and writing in a way that's accessible because it's writing I want to read.
Hmm.
I'm not into this, heavy academic footnoted writing. So my writing is that of a magazine writer. And the book I approach the way I would approach magazine articles. So each chapter to me was like a magazine article. And then I just have to, figure out how to segue each chapter into the next. But it's also a book where you don't have to read it from front to end. It's like a collection of essays.
Absolutely is. I was going to
So
say that. And not only that, but you have some really good historical facts woven in there too. Like I'm the whole time I'm learning, I'm reading the story, connected with the story, but I'm learning so much history
well, thank you.
along the
You know
way.
what, Marcos? I was a history major, and I was a history major only because by my end of my sophomore year, I had to declare a major,
Hmm.
and I liked history, and I was doing well in it. And it wasn't until I became a journalist that I understood history is so important because it gives you context. It's not about dates and names. It is about situations,
Mm.
and it's about relationships, and it's about how do people at a particular period of time interact, and what are the results of those interactions.
Mm.
So
Okay.
when I wrote the book, I knew I had particular feelings about France, Paris, and America, the United States. And what informed so much of my feeling was what had happened in the two countries. And that's where the history came in. So if you understand that history is storytelling through time, it's really the telling of stories through time, then I, as a journalist, cannot write without incorporating history because it informs what we're going through,
Got it. Got
you
it.
know. And it took me a while to get
Took
it
you a
like
while.
that.
That's an interesting way to look at it. What is you have a kinship with France. What's the thing that pulls you there? Why is it a
France
place
is
you
first of all part of Europe, and our experience as a people is a European one. But what I like about the French, and a lot of people don't like the French, there are particular characteristics about them that I like. I like first. I've always said people say, "Oh, the French are rude, they're aloof, blah blah blah," and I would say, you know what? If you've created this much beauty and this much art, you can be anything you want. I just bow down to you. You can be
Interesting.
what you want. But France has a particular, and Paris in particular, has a particular history with Black folk going back to World War One and before, going back to Thomas Jefferson when he brought Sally Hemings over. What I like about the French as a Black woman is that when I'm in Paris, I don't feel that color is the first thing people are reacting
Mm,
to. They see it, but they're not reacting to it in a way that America reacts to
right.
it. And I give the
How could
example.
you yeah, I was gonna say, how would you describe the difference?
I tell this in the book. I'm in the apartment that I lived in at first, had a courtyard, and you had to go through one building to get out through another building. So I come through my building, I'm in this first building, and I'm walking behind this little petite French woman, and it's winter, and I have on boots, and I'm 5'10", and I'm clunk, clunk, clunk. She doesn't even turn around. So now when I pass her, she turns and looks at me and says, "Bonjour, madame." She doesn't clutch her handbag. She doesn't flinch and jump back.
Mm,
The little things that Americans in that setting would
right.
be likely to do. First, an American just turn around if they hear somebody coming behind them, because America has operates at a certain level of fear. You don't know who's who, you don't know who's going to jump off. So there's kind of this edginess that I don't find in France. I don't find folk moving with a kind of wariness that Americans, not just Black Americans, but I think all Americans.
Hmm.
So that's one example. But to me, it was a major example because I'm so used to people having a physical reaction.
Right.
And not just to me, but Black men talk about this all the time. A woman who clutches her hand. I'm sure you've experienced it.
Oh,
I mean,
listen.
I don't know any brother who has not.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
We
don't know
got
anyone who
stories.
has.
We definitely
Yeah,
have stories.
yeah. And then we have a level of edgy, under the surface violence. The other story I like, I was with a young French, she wasn't that young, but she was biracial, very cute girl, tall, my height, looked like a model. And we're in Little Africa, and we're walking through Little Africa, and there are these two brothers sitting on a fence. And when we walked by, I guess they knew I was American. They said, hi. And we didn't say anything. Okay. So then they said, hi. You go, hi. So now we spoke. So I turned to her, I said, now, Tatiana, let me tell you something. If we were in Brooklyn, in my hood, and we walked by two brothers who spoke and we didn't speak, they would be likely to say, what? You think you're too good to speak?
Yes,
What,
yes,
light
yes,
skin?
yes.
I didn't like you no way. I didn't like you no way. I said, there would be this aggressive, insulted, you didn't acknowledge me. I mean, these boys are like, hi, because that was it.
That's
That was
funny.
it. They're not taking our not speaking as some kind of personal affront,
Right.
to their manhood.
Exactly.
And that's just America.
Right.
America is like cowboys.
Yeah.
And Indians, the losers. I mean, the ones they killed. So America is violent in a way that is just always there. And I don't feel that in France. I just don't. And the other, there are brothers in certain arrondissements who are always hitting you up for money. And my thing is to say, I don't speak no French. So I had some dude, he comes up, it's always, want to get your hair braided? So this brother comes up, and before he can say anything, I go, I don't speak no French. He goes, Madame Anglais? Oh, oui, I speak it. I speak it. So I'm like, okay. Here's the local thug, I guess, who's bilingual. He's not trying to like rob me. And he doesn't get angry. It's like, oh, oui, I speak English. I'm like, okay.
He's just trying to get a little hustle on, just like make a couple dollars. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And if he can't get it on, he's not getting mad.
Right.
He's not getting. Now, by contrast, I have a very good friend, an older gentleman who's a Black American. And Bob is such a gangster. He's 85 years old now, but he's a gangster because he's American from Brooklyn. East New York. And he said, well, I grew up in East New York. It wasn't like it is now. But the first time I met him, I'm coming up from the metro, the subway, and there's this African brother with some business cards. I've never seen Bob before in my life, or the African. Okay, so I'm coming up, they're both looking at me, and I hear Bob, he's ripping a business card out of this brother's hand and throwing it to the ground. No, she doesn't want her hair braided. She doesn't want her hair braided. I'm like, who is this dude? And it's Bob. He's like tall, very light skinned, could pass for white, but he is a gangster on his block.
That's funny.
And it's so American. It's just so American. And he doesn't remember this. I said, Bob, you ripped the business card out of the brother's hand and you threw it to the crowd.
That is funny.
Those are big differences. I mean, there are others that are in some ways more telling. I love that the French love Black Americans, going back to having a respect for our history.
Yes.
And admiring that out of the history, we were able to create beautiful art.
Yes.
Love our musicians.
Culture. Yes.
Yeah, they love our musicians. They love our writers. They love our painters. And because the French know history. See, that's the other thing I like about them. They know history. They know our history. They know their own. They can connect the dots. And I think they admire a people because they came out of their own oppression. They overthrew their monarchy. They actually, beheaded their king and queen.
Right.
That's how they got democracy.
That's exactly.
And they respect people who, at least in our case, I feel, they respect people who came through wretched circumstances and have style. Walk a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way, because the French are also very stylish. Very stylish. They appreciate art, they appreciate culture. Yeah. The fashion capital of the world, followed by New York, but led by Paris. So they had a real deep appreciation of who we were. And then during World War I, it was the Black soldiers fighting in so many battles who helped save France. And these were soldiers who weren't even allowed to carry a gun in America. And you bring them to Europe, put them on the front line, give them a gun, and they were bad.
Right.
And the French respect that.
So See, that's what it is. It's the liberation that you feel when you go to France. I'm gonna tell you a little secret, Audrey. So I studied French all throughout my
Oh,
school, right? So
oh, lucky you.
about 12 years of French,
Oh,
all the way
wow.
through the university was my double major.
Oh, really?
And I thought that I was going to move to France. So I went to
Well, you
France.
still can.
You still can, but I thought I was going
Yeah.
there to be an actor. I packed my little bag up. I was there on
Okay.
vacation.
Okay.
Met a an American French there.
Hmm.
This, of course, before cell phones and all those things. You know, we're using maps back then.
Yeah,
So this was
exactly.
like the early
I
90s.
still know how to use
You
a
know what I
map.
mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're there. We meet this French American French. He's like,
Okay.
okay, yeah, yeah, I'll help you. You know, I have myself situated here. Just meet me at Le Centre Pompidou at 3 o'clock. I'll be there, and then you can stay with me, and then we'll figure out where you can work and all this kind of stuff. So that was the day that I was supposed to leave to come back to the States because we'd already
Oh,
been there for a couple of weeks.
okay.
So I get there, I'm waiting, we're waiting, we're waiting. There's no cell phone. There's no, we don't know how
No
to
way
communicate.
to
Yeah,
contact.
no way to contact this person. So that was my big heartbreak. He never showed
So
up.
what? Oh, he never showed
He never
up?
showed up. I had my pictures, my resume. I thought I was moving there to be an actor. I had everything
Oh,
in
no.
my bag, ready to stay.
Did you ever communicate with him
Nope,
after that?
not after that.
You never, what you,
Never. Yeah,
so you don't know what happened?
have no idea to this
Oh
day.
my goodness. And this
Yeah.
was a French person? Who was this?
He was a black American who had made his way to France and was living there and had recently got all his, papers together so he could stay there. But he
Yeah.
said he would help me because he knew
Oh my,
I
and
was
when
living
was
from Chicago.
this? What
This
year?
was I'm gonna say like 1993.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I was fresh out of college and things like that. Don't tell my age. But
Honey, it's a lot
you
younger
know what
than
I
mine.
mean?
Please don't tell my age.
So, it's yeah, it's one
Oh
of
my
those things where I felt
goodness.
a kinship to being in France, and that's where
Yeah.
I thought I was going to live because I knew that that's where the liberation was. I knew that
Yes.
that's where I felt, um, when I was there, I felt accepted, I felt celebrated, I felt,
Yeah.
and also because I spoke French fluently,
Exactly.
there
If
was
I
no
spoke
problem.
French, Marcos, I would be living there now.
Right?
You'd be talking to me, I'd be in Paris if I
See
spoke
that?
French. Yeah, yeah. But I don't. And that for me has been the major obstacle to my really committing to living there. Because as a journalist, I've always said, if I can't commit, I mean, I think it's an insult to live in a country where you don't speak the language.
Right. And I think that's where people go wrong and think that French people are rude. It's because we don't make an effort when we go there to just say a word or two.
Exactly.
Most of them speak English, but
Right,
if you just
right.
go to a country and expect them to speak your language,
Oh,
it doesn't work
please.
like that.
No, I've been in situations. I was at a movie theater and it was, people were online waiting and there was something going on with the ticket. The counters were messed up. And there's this American, the usher is trying to tell people what to do, what line to move into. So the American says, "Why don't you speak English? Speak English." And I said, "Because we're in France." But there was this
Right. Yeah.
expectation that I don't know what you're saying, so speak my language.
Right.
And it's
No,
that American imperialistic,
exactly.
narcissistic, I'm
That's
the
it.
center of the universe, So I really, I feel very, what's the word, illiterate being in Paris, not speaking French. But
But
I
that's
do try. I
you do
do try.
try, right? And that's the effort that you make, and they
Yeah.
understand that. They
Yeah.
appreciate that. We
They
have to make an
appreciate it.
effort. Yeah.
Right,
That's
right,
the
right, right.
connection.
Show that level of respect.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's but what can you say? This is America is America, and it's not changing. I
So
don't.
on the verge of where we are right now politically, what do you see happening and what do you see for yourself?
That's the question
Do
I
I feel
answer
another
every
book
day.
coming?
I don't know if I have the energy.
You don't have it? Maybe just like a little
I don't
short
know.
essay.
I
Maybe
have to.
good.
I mean, I've been thinking about some things, but I'm mainly thinking about what I'm going to do if this man gets back in,
Right.
because I think we're going to be at such a dangerous juncture. It's not going to be about running away for a few months. I mean, I can't really conceive of it, just as I couldn't conceive of him winning the first time. Um, but I think enough has changed that it's frightening.
Yeah, agreed.
I think he has put so many things in motion that 10, 15 years ago would have been abhorrent, like ageism.
Yeah.
Since when is being old, and many people are guilty of this, including my son, but since when is being old like a sin?
Right.
Like just an unspeakable sin.
Are
And
we the only country that doesn't value the people who are older than us? Most
we
other
could,
countries,
we could be. I mean, we're the only country that doesn't do a lot of things.
right.
As an industrialized country, our healthcare sucks.
Yep.
Our educational system is in trouble. Our Congress is pretty much dysfunctional. And our view of age and other so-called deviant, physical, being. I mean, look, Trump has made fun of handicapped people. Come on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's just abhorrent. And people laugh and think it's funny and think it's okay. So I'm more disturbed about that kind of reaction than Trump himself, because we know who Trump is. And I've always said he's not racist because he doesn't have that kind of conviction. He
That's
really
a good
doesn't,
way. Yeah.
because I mean,
Yeah.
he's friends with black folk,
Right.
Don King. And I loved when he first got elected and he called who he thought were the black leaders. And he called in people like Jim Brown
Right.
and Bob Johnson
Hmm.
and Steve Harvey. And I had interviewed Steve Harvey, and it occurred to me when he called Steve Harvey has an apartment in Chicago in one of Trump's buildings. He's on the 88th floor and he has half the
Oh,
floor. So when he called in Steve Harvey, what I realized is that Trump thinks rich black people are leaders.
our leaders. Gotcha.
So, because I'm looking at this roster of folk, and it's like, why is he calling these people? And he said, they're all rich. And some of
Gotcha.
them are his buddies. And one of the things I said in the book, and people don't know this, when he opened his club, his country club in Palm Springs, he was the only one. Well, the admission to get in was 250,000. He didn't care what color you were.
Mm.
If you had $250,000, you could get in. So you black, Jewish, white, Hispanic, he didn't care. So it wasn't about racism as we think of it.
Hmm.
Um, Even when people talk about
You
the
think
building,
you think it's just classism, or do you
for
think
someone
it's
like him, it is.
hmm
Yeah,
yeah,
I think if you're rich, he respects you.
right,
Depending on who you are, he may even like you.
right,
And what is so ironic to me about his base is that these are the people I think he has utter contempt for. These are not his folk.
right.
And the major con he ran, and there is a great line in The Usual Suspects, and I think it comes at the end where it says, the greatest con, the greatest trick the devil can play is convincing you he does not exist. And what
Mm.
Trump was able to do was convince this base of people that he has nothing in common with, that he's one of them.
Right.
And that's really masterful.
That is. There's definitely a psychology about what he does and how he
Yeah,
does it.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
definitely a psychology. He's got it all figured out. I don't know if
But
he
then on
figured
the
it
other
himself.
hand, see, Trump is also, he doesn't see them as his people. But to me, he's the epitome of poor white trash. I
Right.
mean, his behavior to me is that of someone I consider poor white trash. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's not just your class. It's how you behave.
Right. Isn't that the definition of a narcissist?
Yeah.
You're a charming leader who
Mhm.
has a group of people that follow you, and you sort of keep them separate from the rest of society so that you
Right.
can,
Right.
show
Manipulate
them,
them.
yeah, manipulate them and teach
Yeah.
them and take
Yeah.
them
Right. Because he's
advantage.
not inviting them to Mar-a-Lago.
No,
He's
not at
not
all.
inviting them to dinner, with the Japanese former president. He's not doing that.
No, not at all.
But he has managed to make them think that he is one of them,
He's
that
one of
he's
them.
going to hang out with them in a bar and drink beer.
He's actually a thug because he's galvanized people to do the dirty work too. Like when you incite people to take over the Capitol,
Right.
you're the head thug. You're the
Right.
leader.
Right.
You're the
Right.
leader of the
Right. Right.
gang.
Right. 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 And the fact that people are just, it's not that they don't see it, they're dismissing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And that to me is really scary. I had an assignment in 2016 when Trump was running. and I was being sent to Hawaii by AARP Magazine, Great Assignment. And I'm on a plane sitting next to this older white woman, well-to-do. She and her husband had a business in Hawaii. And it was the day after the Billy Bush tape came out, Trump talking about where he grabs women.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out she was supporting Trump. And she had told me she had a daughter and she had 3 granddaughters. And I said, wait a minute, you're supporting Trump and you didn't hear what he said on the tape yesterday. And she shrugged. It didn't matter. And she hated Hillary to the extent that you're going to vote for a man who told you what he thinks of women.
Right. And you see how that's played out over these last few years and
Exactly.
where he sits today.
Yeah. Right.
But we still have 75 million people ready to put the yes for a vote.
Oh, yeah. And even the pundits talk about, the Stormy Daniels case not really being a case that's worth blah, 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 blah. And that to me is like crazy.
Right.
Just crazy.
What are the morals are these people standing up for? They're Christians, but yet, you're talking about someone whose infidelity has come to surface. You're talking about, the way he treats women, the way he treats people, like you said, challenged people with disabilities, laundering money, allegedly. Let me say allegedly on this show.
Right.
All those things, but you're still standing behind him.
Well, I think these are people who are as guilty as he is.
Right.
I mean, the thing about the Christians or the evangelicals, they're some of the most hypocritical people going. Look at all the ministers who've been brought down behind affairs, behind having other women, behind, stealing from the coffers. Look at the priest and the whole history.
My last guest was a Amazon bestseller. Her name is Shelley Snow Padilla. She was a part of that cult. She lived the cult life of an evangelical church. She got out of the cult and she was abused. So if anybody who's watching, make sure you check out episode 13 of the podcast and you can hear her story. But listen to that.
Yeah. So these folk, they relate to Trump on a fundamental level because they behave like he does. It's just not public.
Absolutely.
They're not running for office. So that to me has always been the problem with the evangelicals and a lot of the Christian folk.
A lot of the Christian, yep. Yeah.
It's just
not just limited to.
No, the Black church has always been, homophobic.
Yep.
And I was so angry during the first years of Trump's being in office with what was happening with the border because there was no outcry from the Black church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, where's the Black church on this?
Right.
Families are being separated. These kids are never going to see their parents again, in all likelihood. Where's Sharpton? Where's the Black church? Silence.
Right.
Silence.
Those are our leaders.
Yeah.
Those are the leaders.
Yeah.
And those are the people who have historically, like I said, galvanized us to do things. Civil rights.
But they didn't take that on. They didn't take Trump on.
Right. Musicians, people like that.
Yeah. And the only person who took him on was Maxine Waters. And then she was silenced because she got death threats. Even Trump, when she spoke out the first time, he said something about, you better watch it, Max.
Right.
And I'm like, is he threatening?
Of course he is.
President of the United States threatening one of our Congress people?
Absolutely. That's the whistle call and everybody goes in.
Yep. So these are the things I find disturbing.
Right.
And they seem to be on the increase, on the rise. I don't know.
Well,
but the fact that we're here and this man is the presumptive, not the presumptive, he's going to be the nominee.
Right.
Despite all that's gone down. And I don't know what any of these trials are really going to bring forth.
I don't either.
Is he going to be convicted? I don't know. I wouldn't bet money on it.
I wouldn't bet money on it either. I was just going to say, I'm going to doubt. He's come unscathed so far.
Right.
So,
Right.
It's not, I doubt it that it happens.
And I don't know what the fear is. That's one thing I can't figure out. What are the folk afraid of? He's a bully.
Right. Well, I mean,
I guess he's more than a bully
he's
because
much more than a bully.
yeah, because he's not retreating, he's not running off,
Right.
afraid of people. So I don't know. I don't know, Marcos. What can I tell you? I'm an old lady and I wish I had more wisdom to dispense, but I don't.
And you do have a lot of wisdom, and I do want to have you back on the show. One thing, because I want to talk more to you about the essence and your journalism and things like that, and inspire
Oh,
some people along with that. We're running out of time, but I do want to let people know, where can we find your book, The American Runaway?
my book is still available on Amazon, but I'm trying to pull back from them because they're big crooks. So my book can be ordered directly through PayPal.
Okay.
And if you order directly, you will get an autographed copy. And it's $25 on both platforms, Amazon and PayPal. The
Okay.
difference is Amazon takes like 75%.
So PayPal is on your website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell everybody
and my
your website.
website, it's AudreyEdwardsWrites.com.
So everybody go to AudreyEdwardsWrites.com and get the book. You can bypass Amazon on this one.
Yeah, but you can do Amazon.
You can do
I think
Amazon
they have like 10 copies left, and I'd like to get rid of those. So do Amazon first.
Do Amazon first, and then the rest of you guys go to get to the website. What's your social media? If we need to reach out to you on social media and follow you, because you have some great posts.
I do Facebook. That's my medium, because it's an older. The audience is older. They read and I write.
It's more of a community. Yeah.
It's more of a community. I can write. I love writing, and they read and they respond to my writing. I'm on Instagram, but I'm moving away from that just because it's a different audience and it's a different way of interacting. I'm more comfortable with people who actually read. So Facebook and I'm on Facebook. And on Instagram, the tag, is that what they call it, is Black American Runaway.
Okay. And on Facebook, it's
just Audrey Edwards. Yeah.
Okay. So make sure you go to Facebook, Audrey Edwards, and connect with her. Join her community. She has a great post. She does a lot of things. You'd be surprised. I'm surprised. So make sure you connect with Audrey Edwards on
I like to write, so I can write about anything and try to make it interesting.
It's the pictures for me.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow. Okay.
I see you, Audrey Edwards.
Okay.
So everybody, please make sure you also pick up the book. It's called Black American Runaway, Black and Free in Paris in the Trump Years.
Yes, American Runaway.
American Runaway.
American Runaway.
Audrey Edwards is her name. She's coming back. We got a lot more to talk to her about. So everybody, please make sure you follow the show. The show is OneMicNite, OneMicNite. And you can slide into my DMs on Instagram, because I'm on IG at Marcos Luis, MarCosLuis. And let me know what you think. Lots of good stuff coming up for you this year. And just for those of you who know, I'm actually going back in front of the camera soon too. So look out for some more stuff from me as an actor. You guys all for joining me. Make sure you like the episodes and share. See you next time. This is OneMicNite. Bye-bye.